Story 1. I've driven cross-country for over 15 years, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that most so-called weird things on the road have an explanation, usually involving moonshine or meth. So when a guy in uniform looking, fatigues flagged me down near exit 287 on I-70 and offered triple pay for a last-minute haul, I didn't think twice. The container was sealed, heavy as hell, and had old military markings scratched out like someone tried to erase the past with a key, whatever. Government junk, probably. I signed the paper, backed up, loaded it, and hit the road east. That's just how it works. You drive, you shut up, and you don't ask. The first time I heard it, I thought it was my own damn throat. You know when you've been smoking too. Long and that dry back-of-the-throat cough sneaks up on you. It was that, except it came from the back, inside the container. I turned off the radio, rolled down the window to listen for wind noise, maybe something shifting in the load. Nothing. Just silence and the hum of the tires. I laughed it off. Probably some raccoon chewing on a walkie-talkie, I said out loud. More to myself than anyone else, but then something from the back coughed again. I pulled into a Love's in Aurora just past midnight. Figured I'd grab a coffee, take a piss, and check the straps on that damn container. I parked away from the lights, where the lot fades into a patch of dead grass and cracked pavement. The air was still. No wind, no cars pulling in. Just that eerie, late-night quiet that makes even diesel engines sound too loud. As I stepped out of the cab, I heard it again. My voice. Not a recording, not an echo. My exact words, the way I'd said them 10 minutes earlier. Probably some raccoon chewing on a walkie-talkie from inside the container. Same tone. Same sarcastic pitch. Now look, I've hauled some weird shit. Military surplus, expired meds, even cages I wasn't allowed to look into, but nothing that talked back. I stood frozen next to the trailer, my keys still in hand. "Hello?" I called out, hating how stupid it sounded. And then, get this, it answered, "Hello?" Same inflection, same volume, like it was mocking me. No delay, no distortion. It was me coming back at me. I checked the seals again. Still tight. Still tagged. No signs of tampering. But I swear to God, something in that container was listening. I backed away and got into the cab, slammed the door harder than I meant to. Locked it. I don't usually lock my truck, not at truck stops. Like this. But something about hearing my own voice come from a sealed military container had my skin crawling. I sat there, engine idling, trying to come up with something logical. Maybe it was a speaker, maybe they were testing some kind of AI voice tech in there. Yeah, that made sense. Government contracts, weird payload, experimental shit. Maybe it was just glitching and picking up my voice, but then I heard the laugh, my laugh, except slower, stretched, like it didn't understand how laughter worked and was just imitating the shape of it. I reached for the CB, half tempted to call it in, but what the hell would I even say? Breaker, breaker. I think my cargo is mimicking me? No way, they'd think I was cracked or worse, drunk on duty. So I did the only thing that felt safe. I turned up the radio, real loud. Talk station. Some late-night guy ranting about politics or aliens, whatever. I leaned back in the seat, eyes on the mirrors, trying to shake the feeling that something was leaning closer from the dark end of that trailer. Every now and then, beneath the static and voices, I'd swear I could hear it repeating bits and pieces of the radio too. War never changes. Aliens change the frequency. Always a second too late. Always off. Eventually I killed the engine. Couldn't burn fuel all night. The silence hit hard. No more talk radio. No more low rumble of the engine to drown it out. Just the tick of the cooling metal and the wind, finally picking up, brushing dry leaves across the lot. I was about to close my eyes when I heard a click. A soft, deliberate sound, like fingers tapping the passenger side mirror. Not random, rhythmic. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. I sat up, heart pounding. I didn't move, didn't breathe. And then from the back of the trailer it said, clear as day, "You're not funny." My voice, but flatter, meaner, like it didn't get the joke. I jumped out, flashlight in hand, and circled around the trailer. Still sealed, still tagged. I even knocked on the side. Nothing. Dead quiet now, like it knew I was there and didn't want to be caught. I told myself I was imagining things. Stress, sleep deprivation. Maybe I'd been talking to myself without realizing. It happens on long hauls, but When I climbed back in, there was a new smell inside the cab. Not strong, barely there, but sharp and metallic, like old blood or battery acid. It hadn't been there before, and on the dusty floor mat, a handprint. Mine. Pressed deep, like someone had leaned in real close while I was gone. I sat there, staring at the print. Same size as mine, same smudge on the middle finger where I burned it years. Ago on a radiator cap. It was perfectly mine, and that's what made it worse. It hadn't been pressed from outside the window, it was inside on the mat, like I'd knelt there myself. I wiped it off with my sleeve, trying to push away the panic rising in my chest. I'm not some rookie who spooks at every creak, but something had been in that cab. Something that could copy me, move like me, maybe think like me. I reached for the keys with shaking fingers, ready to just get back on the road. Leave that place behind. As I turned the ignition, the radio flared to life. But not the station. I'd left it on. It was my voice again, except this time it wasn't a repeat. It was talking. "Where do you think you're going?" it said. Tone, casual, like small talk. I'm not done watching. I ripped the cord out of the radio, silence crashing in like a wave. I didn't care about pay or protocol or the contract anymore. I just wanted that thing off my rig. I threw it into gear and pulled out of the lot, tires screeching, mirrors shaking. And from behind me, faint but clear, I heard a voice echoing through the trailer walls. Laughter. My laugh. Wrong again. Drawn out and joyless, like a mask slipping. I drove without stopping for nearly 2 hours, eyes flicking constantly, between the road and the side mirrors. The container just sat there still and silent, but I couldn't stop imagining what might be crouched inside. Listening, mimicking. I tried calling the number from the manifest paperwork, but all I got was static. No ring, no voicemail, just that hissing void. I even considered pulling into a way station and demanding they open the damn thing, but what would I say? "Hey, I think my cargo is a sentient voice recorder that wants to be me?" I knew how that sounded. Worse, I started catching myself, muttering things, nonsense phrases, and wondering if I was still the one thinking them first. Around 3 a.m., I stopped on a narrow service road off Highway 36. No lights, no traffic. Just open prairie and dark sky stretching forever. I grabbed a crowbar and walked to the back of the trailer. My plan, if you can even call it that, was to pop the lock and dump whatever was inside. Screw the consequences. But when I got there, the seal was already broken. Not torn, not cut, just gone. Tag fluttering on the ground like it had unlatched. Itself. The doors were cracked open maybe an inch, just wide enough to see pitch black inside. And from that darkness I heard breathing. Soft. Measured. Perfectly in sync with mine. I should have run. Should have left the whole rig right there and walked until the sun came up. But I stood, frozen, crowbar in hand, listening to that echo of my own breath, like the air itself had learned how to be me. Then a whisper, so close it felt like it brushed against my neck. "You finally caught up." I spun around, no one. When I turned back, the doors were open wider. Not swung, not forced, just inviting. Inside I could barely make out shapes, wire maybe, or limbs. Something shifted. I didn't look long. I dropped the crowbar and ran back to the cab like a goddamn rookie, heart trying to claw its way out of my chest. I drove till dawn, didn't stop, didn't look back. I left the truck idling in the middle of a Chevron lot outside of Limon, called dispatch, and told them to send someone else. I haven't touched a rig since, but I keep thinking about what that thing wanted, why it sounded like me, talked like me, why it needed a ride, and why every so often I catch myself saying things I don't remember thinking, laughing at things that aren't funny. And when I look in the mirror too long sometimes, it blinks before I do. If anyone else out there has hauled for the government, especially on I-70, check your cargo. And if you hear your own voice from the trailer, don't answer. Story 2. I've been hauling freight up and down the I-15 for 23 years. And let me tell you, I've seen enough weird shit on the road to fill a dozen truck stop horror books. People swear by ghosts and desert cults, but most of it boils down to sleep deprivation and cheap meth. That's why when the dispatcher offered double pay for a sealed cargo run to Vegas, I didn't ask questions. Just backed my rig into dock. 6 and watched as 2 guys in black coveralls loaded something under a triple layer of black tarps and barbed wire. "No stops, no peeking," one of them said. I just chuckled. "What? It's the Ark of the Covenant." He didn't laugh back. It was around Barstow, just past midnight, when I heard the first knock. Not a random rattle, not the usual hitch. In the trailer. A slow, deliberate rhythm, 3 soft thuds, then silence. I turned off the radio and listened hard. Another 3 knocks. Same spacing, same pressure. Then something I wasn't ready for, whispers. Real faint, like someone practicing lines behind a curtain. Except the words didn't sound right. Too formal, old-fashioned, almost biblical. I grabbed my phone and hit record, but as soon as I did, the truck went dead quiet, like it knew I was listening. I figured maybe the trailer wasn't latched right or something was shifting around back there. Happens more than you'd think, especially with shady overnight runs. I pulled into one of those isolated truck stops with broken vending machines, and that smelled like burnt coffee and old feet. Walked around the rig with my flashlight, expecting to find a loose chain or a tarp flapping in the wind. Nothing. The whole thing looked exactly like it had when I left the depot. Tight, sealed, like a damn military transport. Still, I gave the side a knock, just to see. No sound from inside, no echo, dead as stone. But the moment I climbed back into the cab and turned the ignition, it started again. 3 knocks. Then 4, then whispers. This time they were clearer, like they were rising with the engine's rumble. "Hark ye, deliver not the cursed flesh." I swear that's what it sounded like. I muttered something about idiots playing games, cranked the volume on the radio and tried to shake it off. But even with AC/DC blasting through the speakers, I could still hear them. Faint, patient, like they had all the time in the world. Around Baker, the air in the cab started to feel wrong. Stale, like I'd been breathing the same recycled breath for hours. My eyes burned, and the hairs on my arms stood up like I'd passed under high voltage. I rolled down the window for care, and that's when I caught a glimpse of the trailer in the side mirror. For half a second, just half a damn second, the black tarp rippled outward, like something had pressed against it from the inside. Not wind, not vibration. It was too smooth, too deliberate, like a hand. I slammed the window shut so fast I almost broke the crank. By the time I hit the long stretch through the desert, I was chain-smoking and watching that mirror like it owed me answers. I kept telling myself it was just my imagination, cooked from years of coffee and highway solitude. But then the whispers changed. They started forming names. My name. Elias. Deliver him unto the hollow gate. I hit the brakes so hard, my coffee flew into the windshield, parked right there on the shoulder, surrounded by nothing but sand and scrub. And silence. The moment the truck stopped, everything stopped with it. I sat there gripping the wheel, heart pounding like a jackhammer. I told myself it was stress, exhaustion, hell, maybe even a stroke. But when I opened the door to get some air, the desert didn't sound right. No crickets, no wind, just stillness. I walked around to the back of the trailer again, and this time the air was ice cold. In the middle of the Mojave, my breath fogged. The tarp was trembling like something inside was shivering or breathing, and then the whispers returned, louder now, as if they were on the other side of the canvas. He is marked. The path is opened. I ran back to the cab and did what any sensible guy would do. I called the dispatcher, told him there was something alive in the trailer and that I was pulling out of the job. He didn't even let me finish, just said, "Keep driving, Elias, don't stop again, do not open the trailer, whatever you hear, ignore it." Then he hung up. No questions, no concern, like he knew exactly what I was dealing with. That's when I started feeling like maybe I wasn't just hauling stolen goods or experimental junk. Maybe I was transporting something and wrong. I got back on the road, hands shaking, skin crawling like ants were burrowing under it. Every few miles the knocks would come again, sometimes slow, sometimes frantic, and the whispers, they started, mimicking voices, familiar ones. My brother, who's been dead for 6 years. My ex-wife calling me by the nickname only she used. Ellie, the voice crooned from the back, soft and syrupy. You never said goodbye. I yelled, slammed the dashboard, threatened to pull over and burn the damn truck. But that just made them laugh. Not human laughter. Too flat, too empty. I passed through Prim around 3:30 a.m., the lights of the casinos blinking like distant flares, and for a second I thought about ditching the rig and disappearing. Let someone else finish this cursed route. But when I checked my phone, every app was gone. Just a black screen with one line of text. Deliverance is owed. No notifications. No signal. I wasn't even sure what time it really was anymore. The world outside felt thinner somehow. Like the edges of it were starting to peel away. Like the only real thing left was the trailer behind me. I reached the drop point just before dawn. A gravel lot behind an abandoned diner off the old highway. No signs. No people. Just a single orange traffic cone marking the spot. I stopped. The truck, engine idling, and waited. 10 minutes. 20. Nothing. The whispers had gone quiet. No knocks. Just stillness again. Thick and oppressive. I stepped out and lit a cigarette with shaking hands. That's when I saw it. The barbed wire around the tarp had been snipped, clean like with surgical tools. But I hadn't heard a thing. I backed away, looked around, but there wasn't a soul in sight. Only one new thing. Footprints in the dirt. Bare. Human. Leading. Away from the trailer. I never found out what I was hauling. Never got a follow-up. The dispatcher's number stopped working the next day. The company doesn't exist anymore, and me. I haven't taken a night route since. I sleep with the lights on and I still check my rearview mirror even when I'm parked. Sometimes in that last moment before I fall asleep, I hear it again. 3. Knocks. Slow, patient, waiting. If you've ever driven through the desert at night and felt like something was watching you, maybe it was, maybe it still is. Tell me, have you ever looked in the mirror and seen something sitting in your trailer? That shouldn't be there. Story 3. I've hauled all kinds of crap in this city. Busted jukeboxes, taxidermied deer heads, once even a bathtub full of mannequin arms, but nothing ever came with instructions like that one. Do not open under any circumstances, the dispatcher said, without even looking me in the eye. The thing was a metal box, size of a microwave maybe, wrapped in rusted chains and bolted tight like someone expected it to bite. It was already in the back of the van when I showed up. No sender listed, no receiver, just an address in Beacon, Hill, and a signature line I wasn't allowed to touch. Whatever. I've learned not to ask too many questions. Boston pays better when you keep your head down. I made a joke about it, something like, "What's in there? Satan's lunchbox," but no one laughed. I pulled out onto Tremont, usual traffic, usual noise, sirens, horns, some guy arguing with a trash can. But the moment I turned into the Beacon Hill area and parked by the drop-off address, it was like the whole street swallowed itself. The city went mute. No footsteps, no wind, no distant barking dogs. Nothing. And then I realized I could hear something else. It wasn't noise, not exactly. More like activity. Like the sound you get when your ears ring too hard after a concert. But shaped like whispers. Not coming from the box, though, and it was inside my head. Bits and pieces, half-thoughts that didn't belong to me. Stuff like, "It's getting heavier," or "Close your eyes before it looks back." I laughed out loud, just to hear something real. My own voice sounded fake, like it bounced off felt instead of glass. The silence outside didn't shift. It just absorbed the sound. I figured maybe I was tired. I'd been running deliveries since 6 a.m. and skipped lunch. Brain fog, right? But the silence followed me. I don't mean that poetically, I mean literally. I drove 4 blocks away and noticed birdsong return, engines revving, a dog barking like crazy at nothing. But as soon as I stopped again, anywhere, not just Beacon Hill, the hush would roll back in like a blanket being pulled over the world. Except for those mental echoes. They were louder now, more detailed. "Your fingers are too loud. Stop moving." I didn't open the box. I swear. I thought about it, sure. Anyone would. But every time I even looked at it in the rearview mirror, my vision would fuzz at the edges like someone smeared Vaseline on my brain. It made me feel watched, not by someone outside the van, by the box itself, or whatever was inside. I started keeping the radio on full blast, switching stations just to drown out the nothingness. Didn't help. The static between stations began sounding like words too, not full sentences, just pieces. He's listening now. Keep driving. I finally hit the delivery address, an old townhouse half sunk behind overgrown hedges. No number on the mailbox, no lights on, no sign anyone had lived there since Nixon was in office. I was supposed to leave the package on the porch and take a photo, standard no contact protocol. But when I stepped out, the silence slammed down again, harder. I couldn't hear my own footsteps on the pavement, couldn't hear my keys jingling. But I could hear something moving inside the house, slow, wet, like someone dragging a heavy coat across tile. I should have left it right there and bolted, but something made me hesitate. Not fear, curiosity maybe, or that same idiot instinct that makes you poke a bruise just to feel it throb. I stepped onto the porch holding the box like it might explode, and the air got dense, not cold, just thick, like breathing inside a soundproof room filled with steam. I took the photo, but the screen showed nothing but static. No porch, no box, just a grey haze that twitched at the corners. Then the door creaked open. I didn't touch it, didn't even get near it. Just creaked open, maybe 6 inches, enough to show me a sliver of the inside. It was dark, but not regular dark. This was the kind that eats light, the kind that feels wet when you look at it too long. And I swear to God, I heard my own voice whisper, "Come in." Not from the house, from the back of my skull. I dropped the box. Didn't even realize I'd done it until I saw the chains slack on the porch like they'd relaxed. I backed away fast, tripping over the last step and nearly eating pavement. The door didn't move. Nothing came out. But the silence had changed and it wasn't empty anymore. It was waiting. And something in my head had gone very, very quiet, like a part of me had stepped inside without the rest. I got in the van, slammed the door, and just sat there with the engine off, trying to listen to anything. A horn, a shout. Hell, even a plane overhead. But all I could hear was my own heartbeat, except it wasn't in my chest, it was behind me. I drove, fast, no destination, just away, past red lights, past honking cars I couldn't hear, past pedestrians who didn't seem to notice me. I kept checking the rearview mirror, and that's when I realized the box was gone. I know I left it on the porch, I didn't go back for it. But the chains, one of them was in the back seat, coiled neatly like a leash. I didn't touch it. I didn't stop. I just kept driving until the city noise finally returned, like waking up from underwater. But something didn't come back with it. That night I parked the van and walked home like nothing happened. I told myself it was just stress, maybe even some kind of carbon monoxide thing. I even laughed about it, made a dumb tweet. Note to self, never deliver cursed luggage again. But when I sat on my couch, I realized the silence was still with me. Not around me, in me. Like there's a space now, carved out and echoing. I started hearing words again, just before sleep. Not whispers this time, clearer. You heard us. You carried us. You opened the door. I never opened it. I never opened it. But something got out anyway. The city sounds normal. My apartment looks normal. But sometimes I catch myself checking the corners of the room too long, or staring at the back of my closet, waiting for the quiet to pulse. I can't even hear my own thoughts anymore without wondering which ones are mine. If you're reading this, if you've ever delivered something you weren't supposed to understand, tell me I'm not the only one, please. I need to know I didn't bring this thing into the world alone. Story 4. I don't take I-10 west out of New Orleans anymore. Haven't touched that stretch in over a year. You might think it's because of the accident in Baton Rouge or the flooding near Lake Charles. But no, it was something quieter. Quieter, but heavier, like a hum you feel in your teeth. I keep telling myself I imagined it. that the brain plays tricks when you drive alone for days. But there's this one memory, a cop staring at the back of my trailer like it was breathing, that won't let go. That night was normal at first, clear skies. Cargo was sealed, nondescript pallets from a warehouse downtown marked for Houston. Nothing hazardous, nothing fragile, just wait. I'd done the route dozens of times, so when I saw the flashing lights just past the city line, I figured it was a drunk checkpoint or some post-Mardi Gras cleanup. They waved me over politely. No guns, no dogs, just 2 officers and one of those portable LED floodlights that makes everything look like a crime scene, even when it's not. One officer asked for my license and logbook while the other started circling the truck. The one checking my papers was all small talk. Weather, fuel prices, the usual. But the other guy, he walked real slow around the trailer like he was waiting to hear something. I watched him in the side mirror. When he got to the back, he stopped. Not like he was inspecting anything, he just froze. Stood there with his head tilted like he was listening through the steel. He didn't move for maybe 30 seconds. Then he came back, face pale, eyes glassy. He didn't say much, just handed me my documents, nodded to his partner and muttered, "Clear." But before I could start the engine, he leaned closer to my window. I'll never forget what he said. His voice was low and deliberate, like someone reciting a warning they'd been told never to ignore. That should never be on the road. Then he walked away. Just like that. Didn't explain, didn't look back. I wanted to ask what he meant, but my mouth went dry. Something in me, some old buried instinct, told me not to. I just drove. The first hour after that was uneventful. I kept telling myself the guy was just messing with me. Maybe he was new. Maybe he thought it'd be funny to creep out a trucker doing a solo haul at midnight. But the way he said it, there was no humor, no smirk. Just that flat tone that made my stomach knot up tighter the farther I got from the city. I glanced at the rear view a few times, half expecting to see something moving in the trailer's reflection. Nothing, just my own headlights bouncing back at me. Still, the air inside the cab felt thick, like the kind of pressure you get before a storm hits. Then came the smell. I didn't notice it at first. Thought maybe I'd passed a dead animal or some spilled diesel, but it lingered. It was sweet, but wrong, like overripe fruit left in a sealed bin too long. And it was coming from the vents. I cranked the AC off, rolled the windows down. Didn't help. The smell wasn't outside. It was coming from somewhere in the truck, or worse, from the cargo itself. I considered pulling over, checking the trailer, but I didn't. I couldn't. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. I'd done this route dozens of times. I just had to get to Houston, drop the shipment, go home. Somewhere around Lafayette, my radio started picking up static. Not the usual kind, not from losing signal. This was rhythmic, almost patterned. Like breathing. It would fade in, then cut out completely, then come back sharper, louder, like it was right next to me. I switched it off, thinking maybe it was interference from some nearby transmitter, but the silence felt worse. Like the cab was too quiet now. No engine hum, no tire noise, just me gripping the wheel and hearing my own pulse pounding in my ears. And then the thudding started, soft at first, like a shuffle, coming from the trailer. I convinced myself it was just the load shifting, badly strapped pallets maybe, but it kept happening, same rhythm, same weight behind it. Not random, it sounded intentional, like something pacing inside, hitting the walls. I sped up, heart racing. The trailer was sealed, locked. Manifest said nothing alive was back there. But that sound, slow, deliberate, dragging footsteps, told a different story. I finally pulled into a rest stop just past Jennings. It was mostly empty, just one sedan parked under a flickering streetlight and a vending machine humming in the distance. I sat there in the cab for a minute, hand frozen on the ignition, trying to convince myself I should check the trailer. Do the responsible thing, make sure nothing was damaged. But my body wouldn't move. Every instinct screamed, don't open it. I stepped out anyway. The night air hit me like a slap. Humid, thick, and that smell, it was stronger now, clinging. to the metal like sweat. I walked to the back, trying not to look at my own shadow stretching along the asphalt. My boots echoed too loud on the pavement. When I reached the trailer door, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The lock, the one I'd secured myself back in New Orleans, was hanging loose. Not broken, not forced, just open. Like someone had unlocked it and relocked it wrong. My hands were trembling as I reached for the handle. I didn't open it. I couldn't. I backed away, got in the truck, and started driving without another thought. I didn't even check my mirrors. I didn't want to see anything following me. I made it to the drop-off just before dawn, some warehouse on the outskirts of Houston, the kind that looks abandoned even when it's not. I parked, killed the engine, and sat there, staring at the rear-view mirror like it owed me an explanation. The dock workers came out sluggishly, coffee in hand, not a care in the world. I handed over the paperwork, signed the forms. When they opened the trailer, I forced myself to watch. Nothing strange, just pallets. Wrapped, sealed, exactly like I left them. No sign of movement, no smell. One of the guys even joked that I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I laughed weakly and told him I just needed sleep. But as I was pulling away, I saw something, barely, a glimpse in my side mirror just before I turned out of the lot. One of the workers stood still, staring into the empty trailer, his mouth slightly open. He didn't move, didn't blink. I slowed down, rolled my window down to say something, maybe ask if he was okay, but another guy slapped him on the back and he snapped out of it. Like nothing had happened, like someone hitting pause and then play again. I didn't stop, I didn't want to know what he saw. Story 5. I've been driving long hauls since I was 19. Nothing romantic about it, just caffeine, dead. Radio stations and the occasional tumbleweed trying to start a fight with your grill. That night on Route 66, somewhere between Seligman and Kingman, the hum of the cargo in the back was the only company I had. It always made this metallic rhythm, like a loose strap flapping. I used to call it the ghost with bad timing, an inside joke. But around midnight, the pattern changed. It started syncing with my heartbeat. Then it stuttered, paused, like someone gasping. I even muttered, "That's new," and turned up the radio. Static. By the time I rolled into Kingman, I was running on fumes and sarcasm. Pulled into this neon-lit grave of a diner. Looked like a place that hadn't changed since the 70s, complete with cracked leather booths and a jukebox playing sad Elvis. I was sitting in the cab, scrolling through nothing on my phone, when someone tapped twice on the driver's side window. I jumped, obviously, but hey, I'm still a tough guy, right? I rolled it down a crack. A guy with eyes too wide, voice too low, leaned in and whispered, "You hear it too, don't you?" I laughed. Not out loud, but that kind of nervous exhale you do when you realize you're not the only one losing it. I looked at the guy, mid-30s, denim jacket, eyes like he hadn't blinked since 2002. "Hear what?" I asked, already regretting the question. He just nodded toward my trailer and said, "The crying starts mechanical, then it learns." I must have stared at him like he'd just offered me meth with my fries. He didn't wait for a reply, just walked back toward the edge of the parking lot and vanished into the dark like he'd never been there. No footsteps, no car. I even got out and looked. Nothing. Inside the diner, things felt off. The air was stale, heavy like wet wool. A waitress with a faded name tag, Loretta, I think, poured me coffee without a word. I asked if she'd seen the guy who knocked on my window. She blinked slowly, then said, "People see a lot of things out there," and walked away. Great. Small talk with cryptic diner staff at 2 a.m. Just what I needed. I tried eating a slice of pie, but my hand wouldn't stop trembling. The sound was still in my head. Not just a noise now, but pattern. Like breathing, like someone trying not to sob. Back in the truck, I sat for a minute before turning the key. The engine coughed to life, but the sound from the trailer didn't start right away this time. It waited, like it was aware I was. Listening now. When it did start again, it wasn't the old rhythmic clank, it was slower, wet. There was a hiccup in it, like someone crying and trying to hold it in. I opened the window a bit, leaned my head out. No wind, no night insects, just that soft, awful cadence coming from the cargo behind me. I whispered to myself, "It's just a busted tie-down, that's all." But my voice cracked on the last word. I finally pulled out onto the road again. Kingman disappeared behind me in the mirror, but the sound didn't. It followed, or rode with me. At some point I turned the radio off completely. Silence felt safer than hearing that sound drowned in static. The desert around me was pitch black, the kind of black that seems to press in on the glass. I kept checking the side mirrors even though I knew there was nothing to see. And yet, every few minutes I thought I saw movement. Not outside, inside. In the reflection, just for a second. Like something was shifting in the trailer's shadows or closer. Around 3:15 a.m., I pulled over on a turnout, convinced I needed to check the straps or I'd lose my mind. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped out and walked around to the back. The trailer door was locked, as it should be, but the metal felt warm, like body heat. I touched it again to be sure, warm, not dessert warm, but flesh warm. I backed away, flashlight trembling in my hand. Then the sound started again, louder now, from inside. A shuddering inhale, followed by a series of dry, choking sobs, childlike. I almost called out, "Hello?" But something in my gut told me not to. Instead, I ran back into the cab, locked the doors, and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel. I told myself it was a sleep-deprived hallucination, that I'd been driving too long, too late. Maybe I picked up something on the road, radio waves or vibrations from the tires that tricked my brain. But none of that explained why I could still feel it. The sound wasn't just noise anymore, it had weight, like it was pressing against my chest from the inside. I tried to remember what was even in this load. Just auto parts, boxes, nothing alive, nothing that should breathe. I drove without stopping for another hour, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. The crying didn't fade, it adapted, sometimes falling silent for minutes, only to return with sudden, desperate gasps. It started to mimic rhythms I recognized, breathing patterns I hadn't heard in years. Once, I swear it made the exact sound my kid sister used to make when she was scared. A hitch in the throat, a long inhale, a whisper of a sob. But she's been gone since 2009. That's when I knew this wasn't random. This wasn't mechanical failure. This thing knew me. Somewhere near the Hackberry turnoff, I thought about dumping the trailer, just unhitching it right there on the side of the highway and driving off. But something stopped me. Not logic, not fear of the company getting pissed. It was the sense that whatever was in there, whatever had learned to cry like that, wasn't locked in. It was attached. And if I left the trailer behind, I had this sick certainty that I'd hear the crying in my dreams anyway. Or worse, wake up one night and hear it outside my bedroom door. I finally made it to the depot just after dawn. The lot was quiet, bathed in that sickly orange light that makes everything look fake. I parked, killed the engine, and sat there with my hand on the ignition for a full minute. No sound, nothing from the trailer, as if the sun had scared it off. I climbed down, legs stiff, and walked to the back. The metal was cold now, normal. I stood there, key in hand, staring at the lock. I didn't open it. I couldn't. I signed the papers, dropped the keys in the office, and walked away without looking back. It's been 3 weeks. I haven't driven since. Can't sleep either. Not really. Every time I start drifting off, I hear it. Not loud, just a hint, a breath, a shudder. I keep telling myself it was stress, sleep deprivation, something explainable. But last night, I went out to my truck, just to sit, feel normal again. And there, on the driver's side window, were 2 perfect fingerprints, small, greasy, like someone leaned in, and the faintest word traced in the condensation. You still hear it, right? If anyone's reading this, tell me you've heard it too. Story 6. I've hauled all kinds of crap across the Midwest. Busted machinery, livestock, even a casket once, empty supposedly. So when dispatch told me to pick up a sealed container from a rail yard outside Joliet, I didn't ask questions. It was standard paperwork, no hazardous labels, just a routine Chicago drop. But that night, somewhere near Cicero, the CB started crackling like it had a life of its own. Problem is, it was off. I mean physically switched off. No power, no signal. And yet I swear to God it started humming as low guttural sounds like someone was mumbling into it from underwater. At first I thought it was a bleed-through from a nearby rig. Happens sometimes. You get interference from power lines, bad weather, maybe even a cop scanner if you're unlucky. But this wasn't chatter. It was chanting, rhythmic, foreign, Latin maybe. I recognized enough from Sunday school to catch words like miserere and libera nos. That's when the moaning started. Long drawn-out groans that didn't sound like any damn radio frequency I've ever heard. I reached for the dial just to prove to myself it was still off, and it was. Cold to the touch, dead quiet. Except it wasn't. I pulled over under a flickering underpass near Western Avenue, figuring maybe I was tired or hearing things. I popped open the cab door, let the rain slap me in the face just to shake it off. The container was sealed tight, padlocked, but there was this vibration coming through the trailer floor. Not the kind from a loose chain or shifting cargo. This was pulsing like a heartbeat. I don't rattle easy, but something about it felt wrong, like the trailer was breathing. I knocked on the metal wall just to prove it was solid and empty. That's when the air around me got heavy. You ever feel that? Like the pressure drops and suddenly your ears pop for no reason. Static buzzed at the edges of my hearing, and I swear the rain started falling slower. Not less, just like time was lagging. Then the CB crackled again, louder this time. The chanting built up, overlapping voices, men and women, some whispering, others yelling. I couldn't make sense of it. Just this thick wave of noise pressing against me. And over it all, one phrase kept repeating, like a warning or a command. Exi de hoc loco. I didn't need a priest to know what that meant. I should have turned back right then, called dispatch, ditched the load. But no, I told myself it was probably some messed up recording someone left running inside the container. Prank maybe? Or something from the yard crew. I kept driving. Tried blasting the radio to drown it out, but every station was just static. No music, no news, not even commercials. And the GPS? Frozen. Just this red dot crawling through a dead map, like the city had blinked off the grid. That's when I decided to drop the damn thing. There's an abandoned industrial strip south of Archer Avenue. Rusted warehouses, old meatpacking plants, all condemned. Perfect place to leave cursed cargo. Getting the container unhitched took longer than usual. The locking mechanism fought me like the trailer didn't want to let go. When I finally got it loose, I jumped back in the cab to pull away, and the whole rig shut down. Engine dead, dashboard black. Even the emergency lights wouldn't flicker. Then, all across the city, like some invisible switch had been flipped. Everything else went dark too. Buildings, streetlights, traffic signals, gone. A full blackout, horizon to horizon, and it lasted exactly 7 minutes. I know because I checked my watch every damn second. In those 7 minutes, something happened. I didn't see it with my eyes, not directly, but I felt it, like a shift in the atmosphere, like something enormous had moved past me just out of sight. The kind of presence that makes your instincts scream, the kind your brain refuses to look at. Straight on. Inside the container, something scraped against the metal, not frantic, not animal, deliberate, like nails or fingers dragging slowly from one end to the other, and then silence. No wind, no rain, just stillness. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move. Then the power snapped back on, not gradually but all at once, like someone hit a master switch. My rig coughed. Dashboard lights blinked to life, and the city around me glowed again in a dull, flickering haze. But the container, it was different. The air near it shimmered, like heat waves rising from pavement. The padlock was gone. Not broken. Gone. In its place, just an open latch swinging gently. I got back in the cab without checking inside. Whatever came out, I didn't want to see it, and deep down I think it didn't want to be seen either. I drove for hours after that, didn't even realize I was halfway to Indiana, until the sun started bleeding through the clouds. I kept expecting to see something in the mirror, a figure, a face, something trailing behind me on the road. But there was nothing. That's the part that still messes with me. Not what I saw, is what I didn't. I called dispatch, told them the container got jacked mid-drop. They didn't even ask for a report. Just said, "We'll handle it," and hung up. Like they'd been waiting for this to happen, like it wasn't the first time. For a while, I convinced myself I imagined it. Stress, exhaustion, hell, maybe I nodded off behind the wheel. But then I started getting these texts. No number, just blank senders, each one with a Latin phrase. Same ones I heard through the Sibi, Domine libera me, Tenebris venit. They come at night, always at night. And last week, I walked out to the rig just to check the tires, and the passenger door was unlocked. I never leave it unlocked. Inside on the seat was a small iron key I'd never seen before, cold as ice, smelled like old earth. I haven't touched that key. I keep it wrapped in a rag, shoved in the back of my glove box, but sometimes I swear, I hear it, like it's ticking faintly like a clock buried under concrete. A part of me wants to drive back to that lot, see if the container's still there. Another part knows I'd find nothing, or worse, that I'd find something waiting for me. I've had engine problems ever since, weird electrical glitches, and sometimes when I switch on the CB I hear breathing, not static, breathing, waiting for me to answer. So yeah, call me crazy or call it a bad trip from too many hours behind the wheel. But I know what I felt. I know something got out of that container, and whatever it wasn't meant for this world. If you're a driver and you get an anonymous pickup near Joliet, don't take it. Let it rot on the manifest. I don't know where that thing is now, but sometimes when I'm parked on the shoulder in the dead hours before dawn, I get the feeling it's driving too. Story 7. I've hauled some weird shit in my years behind the wheel, but nothing comes close to what I picked up last Friday night. Black container, government seal, no documentation besides a destination. Times Square, New York. Yeah, I know, screams conspiracy, right? I thought the same. Still, I signed the slip, made some joke about Area 51, leftovers, and hit the road. Easy money, that's what I told myself. But about an hour in, I heard it. A wet, slow tearing sound, like someone pulling apart raw meat with bare hands, over and over. No bumps in the road, no loose cargo, just that noise, constant, rhythmic, horribly human. I pulled over near White Plains to check it out. No way I was driving a horror show into Manhattan. I circled the trailer, flashlight out, listening. The sound stopped as soon as I got close, like it knew. The container was sealed tight, unmarked aside from a small yellow triangle with no writing. I banged on the side and laughed like an idiot. "Cut it out in there! I'm not paid enough for performance art." Nothing. Not a peep. I figured it was some freaky biotech thing the government didn't want public. Probably just lab pigs or something, I muttered, climbed back in and drove on. But I didn't stop hearing it. Even when the engine drowned it out, it felt like it was inside my damn skull. When I rolled into Times Square just after 2 a.m., the place was practically deserted, which was eerie enough by itself. I parked exactly where the slip instructed, a side street near an old service entrance behind a boarded-up theater. There was no one waiting, no security, no clipboard guy, not even a random drunk stumbling by to ask what I was hauling. I stayed, in the cab for a while, engine idling, checking my mirrors, trying not to imagine that noise in the back getting louder again. But it did. Louder. Wetter. Like whatever was inside was angry now. Or hungry. Still, I waited. 30 minutes. Then an hour. Eventually, I killed the engine and lit a cigarette with hands that didn't feel like mine. At dawn, I called the dispatch office, told them no one showed to receive the cargo. The guy on the other end went quiet when I gave the container number. Real quiet. Then he said, and I quote, "Stay with the load. Do not attempt to open it. Someone will be in contact." Then he hung up. No call back, no follow-up, and no one came. I tried contacting the pickup point again, but the number was disconnected. Meanwhile, that sound in the trailer didn't stop. It grew worse. Now it was pacing, and if something that wet and heavy can pace, every few minutes it'd slam hard against the interior wall like it was testing the limits. I stopped sleeping. Just sat in my truck, windows up, waiting for something, anything, to change. By the third day, I was losing it. My reflection looked like something you'd cross the street to avoid. Bloodshot eyes, twitchy hands, and stubble that felt like wire under my skin. The sound in the trailer had changed again. Less like tearing now, more like chewing. Slow, deliberate, wet chewing. I kept telling myself it was just some classified animal experiment. Monkeys, pigs, hell, maybe even a guy in a suit running some kind of psychological test. I tried to laugh about it, but that laughter always died in my throat when I remembered how the sound stopped every time I got close, not because it was afraid, but like it was listening. That morning I finally snapped and decided to check the container again. Not open it, I wasn't that far gone. Just take another look, see if anything had changed. I stepped out into the sticky Manhattan air and walked around the trailer. There were scratches on the inside of the steel walls, deep ones, long, uneven gouges like whatever was inside had claws or nails. But what made my stomach twist was the smear of something thick and black leaking out from the base. Not oil, not blood either. It smelled like rotten pennies and burnt hair. I staggered back and dry heaved behind a dumpster, swearing I'd leave. It'd right there and disappear. But I didn't. I climbed back into the cab and locked the doors. That night, I parked a few blocks away from the drop point, too paranoid to stay in the same spot any longer. The trailer groaned every time I turned a corner, like it was shifting under its own weight. I kept the radio on to drown out the noises. Didn't help. At one point, around 3 a.m., someone knocked on my driver's side window. I nearly jumped out of my skin. A woman stood there in a grey hoodie, face shadowed, and asked if they had picked it up yet. I asked who she meant. She didn't answer, just stared past me toward the container and whispered, "You shouldn't be this close." I blinked and she was gone, just gone, like she'd dissolved into the city air. The next morning, I woke, up to find all 4 tires slashed. No note, no witnesses, no explanation. The street was quiet, as if New York had decided to pretend I didn't exist. I called dispatch again, no answer. Left messages, texts, even a damn email. Nothing. I tried to reach the police, but before I could even say the word container, the line cut out. Full bars, no service. The thing in the trailer never stopped moving now. It scraped, it slammed, it whimpered. That was the worst part. The whimpering, like it was pretending to be hurt, or maybe trying to make me hurt for it. I didn't sleep again after that. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the weight of the trailer behind me like a second spine, crooked, twitching, alive. I started hallucinating, I think. Street lights flickered when I passed. Pedestrians turned to look at the container, eyes wide, mouths slightly open, like they could hear it too, or feel it. I tried unhooking the trailer once. Bolts were jammed. Wouldn't budge. I even tried torching the coupling. Nothing. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't meant to be let go. I was the chosen idiot to babysit it until what? I didn't even care anymore. I just wanted it gone. Then, sometime around sunset, the rear doors buckled. Not opened, buckled. Metal warped outward, groaning like something inside had grown. I didn't stay to watch. I ran. Not far, just across the street. But it felt like the first real movement I'd made in days. I turned back, breathing hard, expecting to see the doors blown open, some freakish government monster stepping out. But they were still closed. Just breathing. That's the only word I have for it. The trailer wasn't shaking anymore, it was inhaling, slow and deep, like it had finally found peace, like I had done my job. When I came back the next morning, the trailer was gone. Just gone. Tires still slashed, but the entire 18-wheeler unit had vanished like it had never existed. No skid marks, no oil drips, no dents in the pavement. I stood there for hours, waiting for someone, a cop, a government agent, anyone, to say something, to accuse me, to explain. Nothing. I walked to the precinct myself, filed a report. They laughed, told me I must have been high or had my truck stolen. People don't just lose 40 feet of steel in Manhattan, one guy said, but I had. And the silence after that, It's louder than the thing that used to chew in my trailer. I still hear it sometimes. Late at night, just as I'm drifting off, there's a wet ripping sound that pulls me straight back to those 3 days. Sometimes I dream I'm still inside the cab, engine dead, city silent, and something behind me whispering through steel. I've changed numbers, left the job, even moved across the country, but it doesn't matter. 2 nights ago, I found a yellow triangle sticker under my mailbox. No return address, no note, just that symbol. So if you see a sealed container on a truck parked too long, don't go near it. Don't knock, don't listen. And for the love of God, if it ever starts to breathe, run. Story 8. I've been driving long hauls up and down the California coast for over 15 years. Seen it all. Deer jumping into the road, naked joggers in the middle of nowhere, even a guy once trying to flag me down dressed like Elvis. Nothing surprises me anymore. Or, that's what I told myself, until last Thursday night, heading south on Highway 1 through Big Sur. You know that stretch. Cliffs on one side, Black Ocean on the other, and barely a shoulder to breathe on. Somewhere past midnight, headlights cutting through the fog, I noticed someone standing just off the road. White clothes, still as a statue, watching me. At first I thought it was one of those spiritual types, the ones who hike barefoot and pray to the moon. Weird but harmless. Then I saw another. About a quarter-mile later, same white clothes, same fixed stare. Then a third, this one crouched down on a boulder, neck tilted at an unnatural angle like a damn puppet with broken strings. I actually laughed, like great, someone's filming a horror movie and forgot to put up warning signs. But then the voices started inside the cab. Low, garbled, like someone talking with a mouth full of cotton. I turned down the radio, but it wasn't on. I figured maybe the CB was picking up interference, some local channel bleeding in. Wouldn't be the first time I've caught someone's phone call or weird ham radio drama. But the sound didn't come from the dash. It felt like it was inside the cab. Inside my trailer, maybe. I turned to look in the side mirror, expecting maybe one of the straps had come loose or a tire was acting up. That's when I saw the fourth one, right on the shoulder, no more than 5 feet from the white line. Just standing there, not moving. His or her mouth was open, not wide, not yelling, just barely open, and the sound in my cab changed, like it was syncing with that mouth. Okay, now I wasn't laughing. I've hauled cattle, coffins, fireworks, you name it. Nothing in my trailer should be making noise. It was empty except for a few spare chains and my sleeping bag. Still, the voice, now clearly a voice, kept mumbling nonsense. And with every new figure I passed, that mumble shifted slightly. Louder, clearer, like it was tuning itself. And I swear on my CDL, each figure's mouth moved exactly in time with that voice, like they were lip-syncing from a script being read, from inside my truck. I was gripping the wheel tighter than I should have been. My knuckles went white, and a part of me, the rational part, told me to just pull over. Get out, check the trailer. Maybe there was a raccoon or a busted speaker causing the noise, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. It felt like stopping would make it worse. Like those figures would turn their heads together and start walking toward me. I know how that sounds. Trust me, I'd be mocking myself too if I was hearing this from someone else. But I kept driving, eyes darting between the road and the side mirror, because I knew the next one would be closer. And I was right. I came around a bend, and there she was, standing in the center of a turnout, barefoot on the gravel, arms stiff at her sides, pale as death and facing my truck dead on. Her mouth didn't even move this time, it just hung open, like a slack mask. But the voice in the cab sharpened. It said something I'll never forget, because it used my voice. "Why'd you take the shortcut?" it asked. I slammed the brakes, not all the way, just enough to feel the tires protest. I didn't remember saying that, but I had, about an hour earlier, out loud, alone in the truck. That's when I started to sweat, not from heat, but from something deeper. My scalp prickled like the cab itself had eyes and was watching me react. I muttered, "Hell no," and reached behind the seat for the small flashlight I always keep. Stupid idea, like a beam of AA battery light was going to do a damn thing, but I needed to do something. I flicked it on and pointed it into the rear view, into the sleeper. Nothing, still shadows, tangled blankets, and the low hum of the road. But the voice kept talking, soft, rhythmic, now saying things I hadn't said out loud, just thought. "They're always watching when you stop to piss," it whispered. I felt my throat go dry. That's a joke I'd made to myself earlier, that night. Just a dumb thought while I peed behind a bush at a rest stop, not even spoken. I should have turned around, should have called someone, but I kept moving like a coward in motion. The cliffs closed in tighter now, with the ocean falling away into blackness to my right. I passed another one of them. This one crouched in the weeds, hands over its ears, head rocking back and forth, but the voice in my cab got louder. It wasn't mimicking me anymore. It was arguing, not in English, something harsher, like a language being forced through broken teeth. I hit the gas harder than I should have. The engine growled and the truck lurched forward, tires slipping a little on the damp asphalt. I didn't care. I just wanted out of that stretch of road, back to lights, back to cell signal, back to anything human. The voice in the cab was now overlapping itself, like multiple mouths talking at once, one layered on top of another. High-pitched, guttural, whispering and shouting in turns. I turned up the radio, full volume, hoping to drown it out. Static. Then a burst of mariachi. Music. Then nothing. Not even static anymore. Just that voice chewing its way into my ears. The final figure was standing on the center line. I had to swerve slightly to avoid clipping it. A man, I think, wearing white stained with something dark around the chest. His head turned as I passed, and this time his mouth moved too, fast like a film reel on fast forward. My trailer groaned. Something inside scraped against the walls like metal on metal. I looked in the mirror. The interior light had flicked on even though I never touched that switch. In that flicker of pale yellow, I saw shadows moving inside. Shadows when no one should have been back there. That's when I knew something had climbed in. I didn't stop until I reached the next gas station, one of those lonely half-lit places with a vending machine that barely works, and a clerk who looks like he hasn't blinked since the 90s. I jumped out before the truck, fully stopped and ran straight to the back, opened the trailer. Nothing, just the smell of rust and damp metal. No shadows, no voices, nothing out of place, except the chains were unhooked, lying in a shape I didn't like, a rough oval, like an open mouth. I slammed the doors shut and stayed there under the flickering pump light until morning. Haven't taken Highway 1 since, won't either. Not even during the day. I tried to tell another driver about it once, a buddy I used to run long hauls with. He just laughed and said I probably nodded off or hit a bump that shook something loose. Maybe, but sometimes late at night, when I'm driving through quiet stretches, I still hear that voice. Not in the cab anymore, not out loud, but in my own head, whispering back things I've only thought, like it's still in there. So if you ever take that route through Big Sur and see someone in white standing too still by the road, don't look at their mouth, and whatever you do, don't listen. Story 9. They told me not to stop. No matter what happens, keep driving, the guy said, handing me the clipboard like I was signing for a pizza, not a 6-ton sealed crate. I've hauled weird loads before. Military stuff, refrigerated organs, even a life-size animatronic Jesus once. But this one felt different. The paperwork had no company name, no cargo description, just a bold red sticker on the container that read, "Do not open, do not stop." I laughed it off, of course, thought it was some government scare tactic. But now, looking back, I wish I'd taken it seriously. The run was simple, Seattle to Portland overnight. I left just past midnight, thermos full of gas station coffee and a podcast on cults playing in the background. The roads were empty, just me, the humming engine, and that crate bolted to the trailer. But around Olympia I started hearing something, not loud, not even clear. Just this high-pitched tone like a mosquito whining in the back of your skull. I checked the mirrors, the radio, even shut the engine off for a second. Nothing. Silence. Then the moment I turned the key back on, it came again. Barely there, but constant. I told myself it was tinnitus, or stress, or both. By the time I reached the outskirts of Centralia, the noise had crawled under my skin. It wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a pressure like the air was subtly vibrating inside the cab. I tried turning up the volume on the radio, rolled down the window, even slapped myself a couple times like a bad sitcom character. Nothing worked, and then, just as my fuel gauge dipped below a quarter tank, the dashboard lit up. Check fuel. System. The timing couldn't have been worse. There was a 24-hour station just off the next exit, so I pulled in fast, hoping to make it quick, in and out. I never turned off the engine. Strict. Instructions and all. But as soon as I lifted the nozzle, the pump let out this dry clunk. No gas, no beep, nothing. I was cursing under my breath, already planning how I'd chew out the attendant, except there was no one, not a soul in sight. The station was lit, the doors wide open, but it was like the place had been abandoned mid-shift. Then I heard it. A scratch. Claws, maybe. I spun around and saw the first dog. Mangy, ribs showing, hackles raised like a damn cartoon. Then 2, more came out from behind the car wash, then 5, then 9, I counted. 9 of them. They weren't barking, just staring. One of them tilted its head at the truck, ears twitching like it was hearing something I couldn't. Then they started to growl. Low, guttural, synchronized. And they began moving forward. I backed toward. The cab slowly, keeping my eyes on them. One hand stretched behind me like that would somehow stop a pack of wild dogs from lunging. The closest one lunged. Not at me, but toward the trailer. It slammed into the side of it like it was trying to dig through. The others followed, surrounding the back end of the rig, clawing, growling, gnashing their teeth at the sealed container like something inside was taunting them. I climbed into the cab and slammed the door shut, just as one of them leapt at the step rail. Its body hit the side with a thud, and I swear the entire truck trembled. They weren't acting like dogs. It was coordinated, like they were being driven by something focused. I hit the gas. The pump still didn't work, and I wasn't about to get out again. I figured if I could just get back on the road and keep moving, maybe they'd back off. But they didn't chase me. They just stayed behind all 9, staring as I pulled out, forming a half circle around the trailer like they were watching something sacred being taken from them. I kept checking the mirrors for miles after that, and that damn high-pitched noise? It was louder now, not constant anymore, pulsing, like it had rhythm, a beat. I turned off the radio, checked the glove compartment, the vents, even the damn air freshener hanging from the rear view. Nothing explained it. And that's when I realized I didn't want to know what was in that crate anymore. I passed through Castle Rock with the gaslight blinking and sweat slicking my palms. Every few miles the sound would spike, sharp and sudden, like a dog whistle jammed into my skull. I could feel it in my molars, a vibration that made me clench my jaw involuntarily. The cab felt smaller, tighter. I started getting this sensation that I wasn't alone, like something was watching me from the sleeper behind the seat. I checked the mirror again and again, but all I saw was the empty bunk. Still, I couldn't stop glancing back, half expecting to see a shape crouched in the dark. And every time the noise pulsed, the dogs flashed in my mind. Their eyes, their teeth, the hunger. That's when the lights went out, not in the truck, the road. Every street lamp from the overpass to the state border went dark in an instant, like someone had thrown a tarp over the highway. My headlights were the only thing cutting through the black. I should have pulled over, I know. I should have called dispatch. But the idea of stopping with whatever the hell was in my trailer still humming like a haunted tuning fork was out of the question. I kept going, knuckles white, every bump in the asphalt sending a jolt through my spine. And then something moved in the cornfield to my right. Not a deer, not a coyote, tall, too tall, and it kept pace with me for a full minute before vanishing behind the trees. I finally rolled into a way station just south of Kelso. It was closed, long past midnight, but I parked anyway, needing a second to breathe. I kept the engine running, still obeying that ridiculous instruction, but I stepped out for air, head pounding, ears ringing. The moment my boots hit the pavement, the noise stopped. Just like that. No fade out, no static. Just gone. I stood, there in the eerie silence, bathed in the flickering security light, and for a moment I almost convinced myself it had all been in my head. Maybe the trailer was just insulated weird, or the engine had a frequency leak. I laughed out loud, shaking my head. That's when I saw the scratch marks. They weren't old. Fresh grooves carved deep into the metal siding of the container. Some longsome jagged like claws had scraped across it again and again. The dogs didn't do that. Not from the ground. These marks were too high. I counted 6 sets, all vertical, clustered near the top edge, like something inside had tried to get out, or something outside had tried to get in. I backed away slowly, still holding on to some flimsy hope that it was just vandals or wind damage. But when I turned to get back in the cab, I saw the condensation on the window, a single smeared handprint. From the inside, I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just climbed back into the cab like a man climbing into a coffin. Slow, quiet, already mourning something. The interior smelled different now. Not like oil or stale coffee, but something sharp and metallic, like blood left in a hot drain. I didn't look at the sleeper. I didn't check the mirrors, I just drove. The noise came back the moment I hit 50, only now it had layers, clicks, whispers, static woven into that pulsing tone like a language trying to form. I turned the radio back on just to drown it out, but all I got was dead air. Dead air and that feeling again, that I wasn't alone in the cab, that I hadn't been alone for a while. I made it to Portland just before dawn, pulled into the yard, left the truck running, and practically sprinted away from it. The guy in the lot just nodded, clipboard in hand like I was clocking out of a normal shift. No questions, no inspection. They took the trailer to a separate hangar, sealed doors, no logos. I haven't driven since. Sold the rig 2 weeks later. But sometimes when I'm walking near alleys or wooded parks, dogs will stop and stare at me, ears twitching, heads tilted, like they're hearing something I can't. And last night, parked outside my apartment, I saw a handprint on the inside of my car window, but I was the only one who drove it. Story 10. I've driven through the back roads of Georgia more times than I can count, but I never stopped near Savannah anymore. Not after that night. I tell myself it was exhaustion, a bad dream, maybe even some old trauma bubbling back up, messing with my head. But the smell of wet asphalt still triggers something in me, and I haven't parked my rig overnight on a roadside lot since. Just thinking about the voice, that soft, looping whisper, I get this tightness in my chest that won't go away. You ever feel like the dark is staring back? It started normal enough, routine haul halfway through a long run from Dallas to Charleston. I was ahead of schedule, and my eyes were burning from too much caffeine and too little sleep. The next decent motel off the I-16 popped up just outside Savannah, one of those rundown neon-lit places with vending machines older than sin. I backed the truck into the rear lot, locked everything up tight like always, and told myself I'd be out by dawn, no reason to worry. Nothing ever happens out here, except when it does. The room was what you'd expect for $60. Dim lights, damp carpet, a TV that flickered even when it was off. I left my boots by the door and collapsed onto the bed without bothering to shower. Just needed 4, maybe 5 hours of sleep before getting back on the road. I remember checking the lock on the door twice. That's something I always do now. Not just the handle, but the deadbolt too. Still, sleep didn't come easy. My head wouldn't shut up. It kept circling back to something I didn't want to think about. Something from years ago that I swore I'd buried for good. I must have dozed off eventually because the sound that woke me felt like it came from far away. At first, I thought it was part of a dream. A high-pitched whine, distant but rising, like a kettle boiling in another room. Then I realized it was my truck alarm. The rig was parked maybe 30 feet from the motel door, out where the lone street light flickered, like it couldn't make up its mind. I sat up, heart thudding, trying to remember if I'd actually locked the cab. I always do, always. But that night something felt off, like I'd forgotten something crucial without knowing what. I grabbed the key fob from the nightstand and hit the unlock button, but the alarm kept screaming, the kind that punches through your chest and makes your teeth grind. I pulled on my boots, didn't even lace them, and ran out into the night, the cold air snapping me fully awake. The lot was empty, just my truck under that dying streetlight. But the second I stepped outside, I knew something wasn't right. The air was thick, heavy, Not just with humidity, but with that pressure you feel before a storm when everything's too still. The alarm cut off just as I reached the cab. Dead silence. I checked the driver's side door, still locked. Trailer too. Nothing broken, no signs of forced entry. But then I saw them. Wet footprints. Small, bare ones, like a kid had been running circles around the trailer. Not fresh puddles, just prints. Damp outlines pressed into the dusty asphalt. Too many to count. My stomach dropped. I looked around, half expecting to see some messed up prankster hiding nearby, but the lot was deserted. And then I heard it. It was faint at first, so soft I thought I imagined it. A child's voice singing. Not words exactly, just a tune. Hummed off key, like an old lullaby being played on broken speakers. It was coming from inside the trailer. But that didn't make sense. The container was sealed, padlocked. I hadn't touched the cargo since loading it in Texas, and it was just metal piping. Nothing alive, nothing that could move or make sound. I pressed my ear against the side of the trailer, and the song grew louder, still soft, still wrong. Like someone was singing it through a mouth that didn't know how to shape the notes. I stumbled back and hit the unlock again, yanking the cab door open and grabbing the flashlight from the glove box. I shone it around the trailer, half expecting to see some raccoon or maybe a kid messing around, but there was nothing. Just those wet footprints, circling. Some led right up to the cab door, stopped just beneath my own window. That's when I noticed the smell. Not strong, but sharp, like rainwater and something that's sweet. Rotting sweet. The kind of scent that stays in your nose like it's trying to crawl inside you. I should have left right then, but I couldn't. I had to look inside. I unlocked the rear latch with shaking hands. The metal was slick, like condensation had formed only on that one spot. When I pulled the doors open, the flashlight beam cut through the darkness and hit nothing but what should have been there. Stacks of piping, strapped down, undisturbed. No signs of tampering, no space for anyone to hide. And yet the singing didn't stop. It echoed around the container, bouncing off the steel walls like the sound itself didn't need a source. I stepped back, slammed the doors shut and locked them again. My heart was hammering like it wanted out of my chest. I told myself, "You're tired, you're hearing things, it's just your brain playing tricks." I even laughed, out loud. One of those hollow, forced laughs that you only make when you're close to losing it. But then I glanced at the motel, at the trail of tiny footprints leading from the truck to the door of my room. Not just to the door, they stopped right at the threshold, right where I'd been sleeping minutes ago. And there was water, just a faint dampness on the doorknob. That's when I knew. It hadn't started with the alarm. I didn't go back inside. Couldn't. I sat in the cab until morning, engine running, headlights on, trying not to blink. Too long or breathe too loud. The singing faded just before dawn, like it had never been there to begin with. The footprints were gone by the time the sun came up, evaporated, like the pavement had swallowed the evidence. I told the motel clerk what happened. She just stared at me, then asked if I'd parked near the back lot. When I nodded, she muttered something about the girl and walked away without another word. I haven't taken that route again. I don't drive nights anymore either. Too many shadows, too many places something might be watching. I still check my doors 3-4 times before I sleep. But sometimes I still hear it, that off-key melody humming low in the back of my mind. And every now and then, I wake up to find the floor around my truck just a little too damp. If you're ever passing through Savannah and thinking about stopping at that old motel by the interstate, don't. Just keep driving. And whatever you do, don't listen if something starts toozing.